Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty heavy, a user's guide to the architecture of control. We're going to look at how it's built all around us, and maybe, just maybe, even inside us.
All right, let's jump right in with this. It's a really stark idea. The screen in your hand, it's not just reflecting you, it's digesting you. It's an active force that's consuming and literally reshaping who you are.
So to really get a grip on this, we've got to start with the actual blueprints. I'm talking about the concrete political and economic plans that are being put into motion as we speak.
Okay, look at this number, $3.4 trillion. One source highlights this massive tax and spending bill as a key piece of the architecture. And here's the thing, because it's financed by debt, the argument is that it's not just putting a huge burden on future generations, but it's actively designed to, reshuffle the deck, to push wealth upwards.
And that economic plan, it doesn't stand alone. It's paired with this staggering investment in enforcement. We're talking $120 billion for things like a border wall, more immigrant detention. The scale is so massive that one source actually warns it's creating what they call a secret federal police force.
So these policies we're talking about, they're not just random. They're part of a much, much bigger vision called Project 2025. And as you can see here, the list goes on. This thing is a nearly 1,000-page playbook for completely overhauling the American government. We're talking about expanding executive power, pushing a very specific social agenda, even controlling what our national museums say about history. It's comprehensive.
And this is where things get, pretty chilling. You have to ask, right? Is a plan like Project 2025 just one political party's agenda? Or is it a symptom of something much, much deeper? Because here's the thing. Decades ago, a thinker named Ted Kaczynski made a really disturbing argument. He said that any industrial technological system, doesn't matter what its political flavor is, has to regulate and control people just to keep the lights on.
So, whether the control comes from a political blueprint or from the technology itself, something else is happening. A deeper, way more subtle form of control is emerging all around us. And this isn't about laws on paper. This is about the very digital air we breathe every single day.
So what is this new environment? Well, one source calls it an algocracy. And that's not ruled by people or by laws. It's ruled by computational logic. Just think about the algorithms that decide the news you see or your credit score. These systems, they don't care about why. They don't care about principles. They only care about probability and correlation. They're not humanly rational, they're just operational and totally indifferent.
And the engine that drives this whole thing has this incredible name, hyperstition. A hyperstition is basically a fiction that makes itself real. It's an idea, maybe just a rumor, that spreads with so much force online that it starts to have real-world consequences. And then, poof, it basically becomes true, just because enough people started acting like it was.
There's that famous saying from Marshall McLuhan, we shape our tools, and thereafter they shape us. Well, our sources are saying he was an optimist. The new reality is that the dialogue is over. We don't really shape the tools anymore. We are just shaped continuously in real time.
So let's break this down using McLuhan's own framework. On the one hand, algorithms enhance things like efficiency and personalization. Great, but what do they make obsolete? Human judgment, privacy, a stable sense of self. And what old idea do they retrieve? The panopticon, right? Total surveillance. And here's the kicker. It all reverses into a system where you're not the customer anymore. You're the product. You are, and I quote, a standing reserve of behavioral surplus, just waiting to be mined.
Okay, so if we're basically trapped inside this massive system of both political and digital control, how do you even fight back? What does resistance even look like? Well, the sources point to two completely different paths. The whole diagnosis of the problem splits right down the middle. On one side, you have the argument that the problem is the machine itself, the physical stuff, right? The factories, the power grids, the hardware. On the other side, the argument is that the problem is the code, the software, the informational operating system, the stories and beliefs that are running in our own minds.
Ted Kaczynski's position here is, it's absolute. For him, any talk of reform is just a fantasy. The problem is the machine. And the only way out, the only path to freedom, is to tear the whole industrial technological system down, physically.
But then you have this completely different take. Thinkers from a collective called the CCRU and groups like Zero Work that they inspired, they see the fight in a totally different way. They don't want to smash the machine. They want to infect its code.
Their whole goal is to unleash a mimetic virus, an idea so powerful it brings the current reality crashing down from the inside out.
So as you can probably guess, these two very different philosophies lead to two very different playbooks for sabotage.
Here's the classic model. It's from this old World War II sabotage manual. It's all about creating simple, physical friction in the system. You know, the human element. Act dumb, work slowly, misunderstand instructions. Just do little things to gum up the works of the physical machine.
So here they are, the two playbooks, side by side. The physical path. You target the hardware of society, power grids, factories, communication lines. And the mimetic path. You subvert the narrative. You target the software running in our heads. So the choice of weapon really boils down to this. Do you throw a wrench into the gears, or do you release a virus into the code?
But after looking at the system and these two ways to resist it, all of our sources kind of pivot to one final and honestly much more disturbing idea. What if the trap isn't just out there? What if the very effectiveness of the cage has everything to do with the nature of the thing being caged? What if we're the architects of our own prison?
I mean, think about it. Why do these systems of control work so well? Maybe the answer isn't just about their power. Maybe it's about how they tap into something deep inside of us.
This brings us to the psychological part of the trap. Kaczynski argued that as human beings, we have this fundamental need for what he called the power process. It's simple, really. You need a goal, you need to struggle on your own to reach it, and you need to achieve it. But modern society, it kind of short-circuits this. It takes away meaningful struggle, leaving us with this deep feeling of unfulfillment, which, conveniently, makes us much more docile and easier to control.
And running right alongside that psychological trap is a biological one. This is wild. Modern science is showing that trauma, stress, these experiences can be passed down from our ancestors. Not in our actual DNA, but in these little markers on top of our DNA that switch genes on and off. So the trauma your grandmother experienced can literally change how your brain develops, pre-wiring you for things like anxiety and fear.
And this is where it all clicks together. This is the full architecture of the trap. We are literally shackled from both sides. We are born with the inherited ghosts of past traumas, and we're dropped into a society that denies us the very process we need to develop the psychological strength to deal with them. The cage isn't just around us. It's inherited, it's environmental, it's inside and out.
So that leaves us with one last, unavoidable question. If this architecture of control is not only built around us, but is also, well, programmed within us, what does it even mean to say no? In a world like that, what is the true nature of your refusal?